Hello and welcome to Talk Wargaming and the first of my new video series, Back to Basics. Now the idea of these videos is to kind of introduce new players into the wargaming hobby, into like the techniques that you will be required to learn. These include working with plastic, working with metal, basic painting techniques and how to base miniatures, things like that. So in this first video I'll be teaching you how to work with plastic, and I'll be kind of going through what tools you need and some simple techniques as well. So one of the first things that you'll need for any kind of wargaming hobby project is a good surface to work on. Now I personally use this cutting mat here. It's quite like an A3, it's an A2 size cutting mat, so it's a large work area. It means that basically the table that you're using underneath won't get damaged by the glue, the paint, if you're cutting as well, you won't actually get through to the table underneath. So it's a great way of protecting your surface, and it's also a nice kind of grid pattern to use as well. So this is one of the first things that you'll need, either that or you can just kind of like use a flat piece of MDF or something like that. So when you purchase some plastic miniatures, often they will come in this form here. Now this is what's known as a sprue. It's kind of a plastic frame that contains the parts of the miniatures that you'll be gluing together. In this case it's a zombie sprue from Mantic's Kings of War. Often these kind of sprues come with multiple choice of weapons and arms and different things. In this case it's just a different choice of heads, and we can also kind of mix and match the bodies with the legs there as well. So that's the sprue. Now in order to remove the components from the sprue, the next thing you'll need is a set of these. Now these are clippers, most notably they're actually the precision side cutters from the army painter there. These are the ones that I use personally, and these are just kind of a sharp blades that you can kind of just use to snip off the plastic components. So just put them to one side there. Now in order to clean up your miniatures or to kind of remove any excess plastic, you will need one of these as well. This is a hobby knife, and it's got a very sharp blade there. It's almost like a kind of scalpel like blade. This is also from the Army Painter. You probably noticed the theme here. Big fan of the Army Painter. These tools are kind of nice and sturdy, and also a kind of a good price as well. They're fairly priced, good tools. So you can actually pick up a set of like a plastic starter set from them as well, which contains the knife, the clippers, and also the next item, which is what you'll need to glue the miniatures together, is a plastic glue as well. Now you can use super glue, but as these are plastic, it is just much better to use plastic glue for these kind of components there. So I'll explain a bit more about the plastic in a moment. One of the things that you can also use is some sets of hobby files as well. Now as you'll see when I take the miniatures off the sprue, they do often have these mould lines going around the outside, which is where the kind of the two halves of the mould join together, and you can remove them with the hobby knife, or you can use this set of kind of hobby files as well. So just pop them to one side there for the time being. So now that you're kind of all kitted out, you're ready to kind of tackle your miniatures sprue. So what we'll do is we'll zoom in so you can kind of get an idea as to how I'm using these clippers to remove these miniatures. So here we have the zombies, and what we're going to be needing to do with these is clip off a section of legs, a body, a head, and then maybe an arm as well. So let's just go for this one. So I've got my the clippers there, and what you want to do is you want to place this flat side ideally against the flat joins where the sprue meets the miniatures there as well. So you want to kind of be careful not to actually damage the miniature itself. Line them up, and small amount of pressure should kind of release them from the sprue there. Now you want to do this for all the way around. Now the way these attach to the sprue are slightly difficult, so I'm just going to clip them off there so that we can work with it a bit better. And we want to use the flat side again on this flat side here, because there's actually a tapered side and there's a flat side. So if you're doing like a flat surface, you want to make sure you clip the flat side like so. So there we have a set of legs. So let's do the same thing for the rest of the body and the head and the arm as well. So now that the components have been clipped off the sprue, we need to do a little bit of tidying up, as there are a few of these kind of small areas where you can see that the sprue hasn't been clipped off from the component correctly. So if it's large enough like this, we can actually just bring the clippers back in, and we can just quite easily just trim that off again, being very careful not to actually damage the model. However, we're always going to be left with a small amount there. You can just about see it. So for this we'll be using the hobby knife there. So be careful when using these, as they are extremely sharp, and getting a cut from this is quite painful, and it will just continue to bleed for ages, and it will takes a long time to scab up. So when you're cutting, always make sure you cut away from yourself and away from your fingers. You don't want to be accidentally slipping and slicing yourself. So you just want to kind of gently trim away this excess there. Just being very careful to do so. And that's like a much smoother surface now, so it's not going to be obvious that this miniature has actually been clipped from a sprue. One of the other things that you may find with these miniatures is that they actually have a mould line, and you can just about see the mould line there. And that's basically where the two halves of the mould join together, and they kind of create a little bit of a ridge there. So sometimes it's not too bad, especially if they're on the bottom of the base. You won't see them normally, but sometimes you can see them on the miniatures. It's quite difficult to pick up on the camera. There's a slight mould line there, and it's a little bit more obvious in person. So I'll be showing you how to remove this one here, just as an example. There are two ways you can achieve that. You can either use your hobby knife again, and you can kind of scrape along the line. Let's get the focus correct. If you kind of scrape the blade along the line, you can see how it removes, like so. And it's a lot smoother surface. Alternatively, you can bring in a hobby file and just kind of run that along the base there. Now this kind of surface is perfect because it's actually quite flat, so it allows you to use the file very easily. So just run that over, and they have a much smoother surface. And if you're applying this paint over these miniatures without removing these mould lines, it becomes a lot more obvious. There's this kind of weird seam that runs down legs and faces and all sorts of things, and it will kind of impact the overall quality and look of the miniature. So now that we've kind of prepped the pieces, let's actually move on to gluing all of these together. So to glue all your pieces together, what you'll need is plastic glue. Now this is also an army painted plastic glue. Now the reason why you should use plastic glue as opposed to super glue is the way plastic glue works. It actually melts the surfaces of the plastic miniature. So if you apply a bead there, it will actually dissolve that surface and dissolve the surface here that you're actually gluing onto it. And when the bond hardens, it actually kind of creates almost like a weld effect. It kind of melds these two together by melting the two surfaces and kind of intermingling them together. It's much better than super glue for plastic miniatures, as it does kind of give you a degree of posability, and also gives you a very strong bond that is quite difficult to be broken once it's been set. So if I just take the lid off here. Now one of the things you should be aware of when using plastic glue is that it is quite strong smelling, so you should really use it in a well ventilated area, and the miniatures that when they're drying should be kind of kept somewhere where there's ventilation as well, otherwise you can get quite overcome by the strong fumes. So first of all, we need to get the two surfaces that we're gluing together. We have the zombie's torso and the zombie's legs there. So we're going to drop a small bead in there. Now you don't need too much glue. If you use too much, it can actually end up taking too long to dry and being quite frustrating. We then get the torso, and we kind of line it up with the position that we need, and we just kind of pop it in there like that. Now one trick I personally like to use is when I'm gluing these parts together, as I allow them to kind of move up. Once I've kind of set them a bit and got the glue on both sides of the joins, I just kind of take them apart, let the air get to them a bit better, and they seem to dry a little bit faster that way. So then we just place it back in there, and you can tell that it's quite tacky and it sticks quite well there. So it's also an advantage if you kind of press the parts together. You also get a better join doing that as well. Just hold these for a few moments, and there we go. The model's torso has been glued to his legs, and he's kind of got this like lunging forward look like so. So let's glue the arm and the head on there as well. So here is the completed assembled zombie. Now I've left it for a few minutes in order to allow the glue to kind of harden properly, and it's quite sturdy now. There's not much will kind of pull that apart. You'd have to give it some quite a lot of force in order to kind of get it free. Now whilst this tutorial kind of focused just on these Kings of War zombies, you can actually use the same techniques across any plastic kits, as long as it's kind of this hard plastic that I've been using in this set here. So plastic's probably one of the easier materials to work with in terms of wargaming. Plastic glue is quite a good adhesive to use. It's quite a soft material as well, so you can kind of clip it off and file it down and use a hobby knife to clear off any mould lines as well. So it's probably the most versatile of the materials that you'll be using during wargaming hobby. So that was the first of my back to basics tutorials, and I'm probably going to be doing a how to work with resin tutorial in the next video. Let me know what you think. If you found it helpful, please let me know in the comments. I am hoping to do a kind of wide range of different videos related to kind of this series as well. So be sure to subscribe to be kept up to date with my latest back to basics videos or any other unboxings or tutorials that I may do. And as always, thanks for watching and goodbye.